Captain Lee Taman stood in his small cabin aboard the transport ship, staring at the urgent message on his screen. The words made no sense to him at first. Emergency at the Galactic Council. All human security forces needed immediately. Report to Nexus Station within 12 hours. He had been a soldier for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like this before. The Galactic Council was the most peaceful place in known space. Nothing bad ever happened there. The different alien species met there to talk about trade and borders. They signed papers and made deals. Sometimes they argued, but they never fought. Taman put on his blue uniform and checked his weapon. The laser pistol felt heavy on his belt. He hoped he would not need to use it. Human soldiers were still new to this whole galactic community thing. Most aliens did not trust them yet. Some aliens thought humans were too young and too stupid to help with important matters. The transport ship landed at Nexus Station 6 hours later. Taman walked through the long metal corridors toward the council chambers. He had visited this place once before, 2 years ago, when he first joined the Terran Guard. Back then, everything had been clean and quiet. Today, something felt different. The air tasted wrong. There were too many sounds coming from the main hall. Ambassador Park Miran met him at the security checkpoint. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking. Miran had been humanity's voice at the council for 3 years. She was smart and brave, but today she looked scared. "Thank the stars you are here," she said in Korean. "Everything is falling apart. The Draconian guards left their posts this morning, just walked away in the middle of the peace talks." Taman frowned. The Draconians were 7-foot-tall lizard people with scales like armor. They were proud warriors who never ran from anything. "Why did they leave?" "Blood feuds," Miran said. "Old hatreds. The Vorthak Empire and the Helian Collective have been trying to make peace for months. But when they sat down to sign the treaty today, something went wrong. The Draconians started taking sides. They remembered some old war between their people and the Vorthaks from 1,000 years ago. They walked toward the main chamber. The sounds got louder with each step. Taman could hear shouting in at least 6 different alien languages. Something heavy crashed against a wall. Glass broke. Someone screamed. "How bad is it?" he asked. Miran stopped walking. "See for yourself." She opened the door to the observation deck. Below them, the Grand Council chamber looked like a war zone. The beautiful round table where representatives from 50 species used to sit in peace was broken in half. Chairs were scattered everywhere. 3 different groups of aliens were standing on opposite sides of the room, shouting at each other. The Vorthak representatives were big creatures that looked like walking trees. Their bark-like skin was turning dark red with anger. They kept pointing their branch-like arms at the Helian Collective members on the other side. The Helians looked like living crystals that sparkled in the light. When they got mad, they made high-pitched sounds that hurt human ears. But the worst part was seeing all the other species choosing sides. The bird-like Altarians were flapping, their wings and screeching in support of the Vorthaks. The small furry Kethri were hiding under their tables, too scared to move. The Zephyrians, who looked like floating jellyfish, were changing colors rapidly, a sign they were very upset. "Where are the other guards?" Taman asked. "Gone," Miran said. "The Draconians walked out first. Then the Altarian security team left because they said they could not work with tree people. The synthesizer guards shut down because their logic circuits could not process this much emotional chaos. We tried calling in the Luminari peacekeepers, but they said the negative energy in the room was making them sick." Taman watched as a Helion representative threw something that looked like a glowing rock. It hit the wall and exploded into bright sparks. The Vorthaks responded by making a sound like wind rushing through a forest. All the plant-loving species in the room started moving toward the Vorthaks. All the technology-based species moved toward the Helians. "This is insane," he said. "What started all this?" "A simple trade agreement," Miran replied. "The Vorthaks and Helians both want mining rights on a planet called Kepler 442b. It has rare metals that both species need. The talks were going well, until someone mentioned the Battle of Zendara." "What is the Battle of Zendara?" "A space battle from 800 years ago. The Vorthax helped some species called the Ancient Gardeners fight against the Crystal Coalition. Most of the Helians were part of that coalition. Thousands died on both sides. Taman stared at her. 800 years ago? Why do they still care about that? Because they remember everything, Moran said. Every alien species I have met has perfect memory of their history. They pass down stories and feelings from generation to generation. When a Helian looks at a Vorthak, he does not just see another person. He sees the enemy who killed his great-great-great-grandfather. A new sound came from below. The Corvin, representatives who looked like walking suits of armor, were drawing their ceremonial swords. This made the Mindari, who were pale humanoids with large heads, start glowing with psychic energy. Soon, half the species in the room were preparing for battle. "We need to do something," Taman said. "Like what?" "Every security force we have tried has failed. The guards always end up taking sides based on old alliances or genetic instincts. The Draconians hate anyone who is not a warrior culture. The Altarians get nervous around small mammals. The synthesizers cannot handle emotional outbursts." Taman looked down at the chaos again. Then something strange happened. He realized he did not feel angry at any of the species below. The Vorthax looked upset, but he did not see them as enemies. The Helians seemed scared, but he did not want to hurt them. The Corvins were being aggressive, but he felt no urge to fight them. "What if that is exactly what we need?" he said. "What do you mean? What if the reason human guards might work is because we do not have old memories? We do not have ancient enemies. When I look down there, I do not see good guys and bad guys. I just see people having a very bad day." Myran stared at him. "You might be right. Humans have only been in space for 60 years. We do not have thousands of years of grudges." Another crash came from below. This time someone had thrown a chair. Security alarms started blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed everything in red. "I need to call for backup," Taman said. "How many human security officers can we get here in the next hour?" "Maybe 20, Miran replied. "That will have to be enough. We are going to try something that has never been done before." "What is that?" Taman checked his weapon one more time. "We are going to protect everyone equally, even if they hate each other." He walked toward the door that led down to the main chamber. Behind him, Moran was already sending messages to every human ship in the area. Below, 50 different alien species were preparing for a war that started centuries before humans had even learned to make fire. Taman took a deep breath and opened the door. Dr. Kim Jiwoo had been studying alien behavior for 7 years, but she still could not believe what she was seeing. In her small research lab on Earth, she stared at screens full of data about different species and their conflicts. Every single alien race had the same problem. They could not forget their past. The computer showed her reports from the Galactic Council archives. The Altarians had been fighting the Kethri for over 2,000 years. Not because of territory or resources, but because of instinct. The bird-like Altarians had evolved to hunt small mammals like the Kethri. Even though both species were now intelligent and civilized, the Altarians still felt the urge to attack when they saw a Kethri. The Kethri, in turn, could not stop themselves from running and hiding. It was the same story everywhere. The aquatic depth singers feared any species that lived on land because their ancestors had been hunted by land creatures millions of years ago. The hive-minded Zephyrians distrusted any species that valued individual freedom because their genetic memory told them that individualists destroyed unity. Jiwoo's research had a name for this: evolutionary memory syndrome. Every alien species was trapped by the survival instincts that had kept their ancestors alive. They could not choose to forget. They could not choose to forgive. Their biology would not let them. The door to her lab opened. Commander Bai Hyunsu walked in, still wearing his spacesuit from the transport ship. He had just returned from his first assignment with the human security detail at a minor trade station. "How did it go?" Jiwoo asked. Hyunsu sat down heavily in a chair. "Strange. Very strange. We were assigned to guard a meeting between the Draconians and the synthesizers. Everyone expected trouble because warrior cultures and logic-based cultures never get along. Did they fight? No, that is the strange part. They argued a lot, but they never attacked each other. At first I thought it was because we were there to stop them. But then I realized something else was happening. Jiwoo leaned forward. What? The other security forces that had tried to guard those meetings before always made things worse. Draconian. Guards would get excited by the warrior posturing and encourage fights. Synthesizer guards would try to shut down all emotional discussion, which made the Draconians angrier. But when my team stood there, nothing happened. What do you mean nothing happened? Hyunsu rubbed his forehead. The Draconians did their usual chest beating and sword waving. The synthesizers did their logical analysis and emotional dismissal. But when they looked at us, they just saw guards. Not allies, not enemies. Just people doing a job. Jiwoo pulled up her data on human psychology. Humans had evolved on Earth in isolation from other intelligent species. They had no genetic memories of fighting crystal beings or tree people or floating jellyfish. Their survival instincts were designed to work against Earth predators like lions and bears, not against aliens. I think I understand, she said. When you look at a Draconian, what do you see? A big lizard person in armor who talks loudly and waves weapons around. Do you feel afraid? Not really. Should I? Do you feel like you need to fight them? Only if they attack someone. But they have never actually attacked anyone while we were watching. Jiwoo turned to her computer and started typing notes. This is incredible. You are describing perfect neutrality. When a Corvan looks at a Mindari, his genetic memory says, psychic threat must defend territory. When a Mindari looks at a Corvan, her genetic memory says violent brute must use mind powers to protect self. But when you look at both of them, you just see two different people. Is that weird? It might be the most important discovery in galactic relations, Jiwoo said. Every conflict between species happens because they cannot turn off their evolutionary responses. But humans never developed those responses toward an alien species because we never met alien species until 60 years ago. She showed him a video from the archives. It was footage from a peace conference 5 years earlier between the Helians and the Architect Guild. The meeting had been guarded by a mixed security force of different species. Within an hour, the guards themselves were fighting. The Altarian guards attacked the Kethri guards. The synthesizer guards tried to shut down the Zephyrian guards' emotional displays. The whole thing became a disaster. Look at this, she said, pointing to the screen. Every guard in that room was reacting to their genetic programming. They could not help themselves. Hyunsu watched as chaos erupted on the video. But we do not have that programming. Exactly. Humans are the only species in known space that can look at any alien and see just another person instead of an ancient enemy. Her computer chimed with an incoming message. It was from Commander Park, the head of human military operations. The message was short. Need all available research on human-alien psychological interactions. Emergency at Nexus Station. Large-scale conflict between multiple species. Human guards being deployed. Jiwoo felt her stomach drop. They are sending human guards to handle a major conflict? How major? Hyunsu asked. She forwarded the message to her screen. More details came through from the Galactic Council. Over 50 species involved. Multiple security forces had already failed and withdrawn. Some species were choosing sides based on ancient alliances. The situation was getting worse every hour. This could be the test that proves our theory, she said. Or it could be a complete disaster. What do you mean? Think about it. We have been assuming that humans can remain neutral because we do not have evolutionary biases against aliens. But what if we are wrong? What if humans have some other kind of bias we do not know about? What if when human guards see a large-scale conflict, they start picking sides based on which aliens look more familiar or seem more friendly? Hyunsu stood up. There is only one way to find out. You are going to Nexus Station? My whole unit is being called up. We leave in 2 hours. Jiwoo began gathering her research files. I am coming with you. Why? Because if this works, it will change everything. Humans could become the galaxy's neutral peacekeepers. But if it fails, she looked at the data showing centuries of alien conflicts. If it fails, it might start the biggest war in galactic history. They spent the next hour reviewing everything they knew about the species involved in the Nexus station crisis. The Vorthax were plant-based and thought in terms of growth cycles and seasonal changes. They valued patience and long-term planning. The Helians were crystal-based and thought in terms of energy patterns and harmonic frequencies. They valued precision and efficiency. On paper, they should be able to work together, Jiwoo said. Plant life and crystal formations can coexist easily, but their evolutionary memories are getting in the way. What memories? The Vorthax helped destroy a crystal-based civilization 800 years ago. The Helians were part of a coalition that burned entire plant worlds during the same war. Neither species can forget that. Hyunsu packed his gear. But humans were not part of that war. That is the key, Jiwoo said. When you look at a Vorthak, you do not see the species that burned crystal cities. When you look at a Helian, you do not see the coalition that destroyed plant worlds. You see two groups of people who are angry about something that happened before your great-great-great-grandparents were even born. And you think that will help us keep the peace? I think it is the only thing that can keep the peace. Every other species in that room is carrying genetic baggage from conflicts that humans know nothing about. We might be the only ones who can stand in the middle and protect everyone equally. The transport ship was ready. Hyunsu and 23 other human guards boarded the vessel. Jiwoo came along as a consultant. As they flew toward Nexus Station, she continued reviewing data about alien psychology. The more she studied, the more convinced she became that humans were truly unique. Every alien species had developed intelligence while maintaining their deepest survival instincts. Humans were the only ones who could override their instincts when the situation demanded it. There is something else, she told Hyunsu as they approached the station. Humans do not just lack biases against aliens. We actively try to understand different perspectives. When we see a conflict, our first instinct is usually to ask, why are they fighting? Not, which side should I support? Is that unusual? Completely. Most alien species, when they see a conflict, immediately categorize the participants as allies, enemies, or threats. Humans seem to categorize them as people with a problem that needs solving. The transport ship docked at Nexus Station. Through the windows, they could see other ships arriving and leaving rapidly. The situation was clearly getting worse. As they prepared to disembark, Jiwoo felt both excited and terrified. They were about to test the most important theory in galactic relations. Either humans would prove themselves as the galaxy's natural peacekeepers, or they would fail spectacularly and make everything worse. Good luck, she told Hyunsu. We will need it, he replied, checking his weapon one last time. The council chamber was still a mess when the human security team arrived. Sergeant Osoman looked around at the broken furniture and scattered papers. In her 12 years as a soldier, she had seen war zones that looked better than this. But the strangest part was not the damage. It was the way the different alien species were arranged. The room had naturally divided into 3 groups. On the left side stood the Corvin Federation representatives, looking like walking tanks in their metal armor. Their leader, a massive figure called War Speaker Thax, kept hitting his chest with his armored fist and making loud declarations about honor and strength. On the right side, the Mindari collective had gathered near the tall windows. These pale, thin humanoids with oversized heads were standing perfectly still, but the air around them shimmered with psychic energy. Their leader, a female called Prime Thinker Velnara, had her large black eyes closed in concentration. In the center of the room, the Architect Guild representatives floated inside their mechanical suits. They looked like humans but smaller and thinner, surrounded by complex machines that helped them breathe and think. Their leader, Constructor Z41, was making rapid calculations on a holographic display. All 3 groups wanted the same thing: exclusive mining rights to a sector of space that contained enough exotic matter to power their civilizations for centuries. The sector had been discovered 6 months ago, and the Galactic Council had been trying to decide who should get it ever since. Status report. Soman asked Captain Lee Taman through her earpiece. Bad and getting worse, came his reply. The Corvins are claiming the sector by right of conquest. The Mindari say they have the psychic sensitivity needed to mine it safely. The architects insist that only their technology can extract the materials without causing environmental damage. Officer Nam Ji-hoon positioned himself near the Corvin, Group. Sergeant, War Speaker Thax just challenged Constructor Z-41 to single combat. What did the constructor say? He ignored the challenge and started listing statistical reasons why combat is an inefficient method of resource allocation. Specialist Choi Hana was monitoring the Mindari. The psychics are getting agitated. Prime thinker Velnara keeps looking at the Corvins like she wants to fry their brains. Soman had studied the files on all three species during the flight to Nexus station. The Corvins were a warrior culture that respected only strength and courage. They had conquered half their home galaxy before joining the Galactic Council. The Mindari were peaceful but arrogant, believing that their psychic abilities made them superior to all other forms of life. The architects were obsessed with efficiency and logic, viewing emotional decisions as primitive and wasteful. Under all normal circumstances, these three species could barely tolerate being in the same room together. The Corvins thought the Mindari were cowards who hid behind mental tricks. The Mindari considered the Corvins to be barely evolved savages. The architects viewed both groups as inefficient biological mistakes. Listen up, people, Soman said to her team. Our job is to keep these groups from killing each other while they figure out who gets the mining rights. Previous security forces have failed because they kept taking sides. Draconian guards favored the warriors. Luminary guards supported the peaceful psychics. Synthesizer guards backed the logical architects. What makes us different? Asked Officer Park Dong-yun. We do not care who wins, Soman replied. We just care that everyone follows the rules and nobody gets hurt. The first test came within minutes. War Speaker Thax stood up and announced that the Corvin Federation would take the sector by force if the Council did not award it to them within 1 hour. He drew a ceremonial sword and pointed it at Constructor Z-41. Previous guards would have either supported the challenge, tried to stop it, or called for backup. Instead, Soman walked calmly between the two leaders. War Speaker Thax, she said politely, please put your weapon away. You are scaring the architect delegation. The massive Corvin stared down at her. You dare order a war speaker of the Federation? I am not ordering anything, Soman replied. I am asking you to follow Council rules. No weapons drawn during negotiations unless there is an actual threat. The architects are a threat to Corvin honor. How? Thax seemed confused by the question. They exist without courage. That is not against Council rules, Soman said. Being different is not a crime here. Constructor Z-41 floated forward in his mechanical suit. War Speaker, your threat of violence violates 17 different Council regulations regarding peaceful negotiation procedures. Nobody asked you, machine lover, Thax shouted. Before the situation could escalate, Prime Thinker Velnara's voice echoed inside everyone's head. Both of you are primitives. The sector should belong to those with the wisdom to use it properly. This was the moment when previous security teams had lost control. The telepathic insult would have triggered every species' defensive responses. Draconian guards would have attacked the psychics. Synthesizer guards would have shut down from the emotional chaos. Altarian guards would have chosen the side that seemed strongest. Instead, Officer Nam Ji-hoon simply walked over to Prime Thinker. Velnara, ma'am, please keep your thoughts to yourself during negotiations. Mind speaking without permission is considered rude by most council members. You cannot regulate psychic communication, primitive, Velnara replied directly into his mind. Actually, we can, Ji-hoon said calmly. Council Regulation 847B clearly states that all communication during formal negotiations must be audible to all participants. If you want to make a point, please say it out loud so everyone can hear. The strange thing was, it worked. Velnara looked surprised that a human was not intimidated by her psychic abilities. War Speaker Tax slowly put away his sword, apparently confused by Soman's polite but firm response. Constructor Z41 returned to his calculations, muttering about the inefficiency of emotional outbursts. "How did you know to do that?" Specialist Choi Hana asked quietly. "I did not," Soman admitted. "I just treated them like people having an argument." The negotiations continued for several hours. Each time tensions rose, the human guards intervened with simple, reasonable requests. When the Corvins started chanting war songs, Officer Park Dong-hyun asked them to sing more quietly, because it was disturbing other delegations. When the Mindari began floating objects around the room with their minds, Specialist Lee Yejin politely asked them to put everything back where it belonged. When the architects started projecting holographic data that hurt other species' eyes, Sergeant Soman requested that they adjust the brightness. None of these interventions were dramatic or forceful. The humans simply treated each species' behavior as minor social issues that needed small adjustments, not fundamental cultural conflicts that required choosing sides. Dr. Kim Ji-woo watched from the observation deck, taking notes on everything. "This is remarkable," she told Ambassador Park Moran. "Look how they are handling this." "What do you mean?" "Every other security force has tried to suppress the natural behaviors of these species or favor one group over another. The human guards are letting each species be themselves while keeping them from hurting each other." On the floor below, War Speaker Thax was explaining Corvin military traditions to Officer Jihoon, who listened with genuine interest. Prime Thinker Velnara was showing Specialist Hana how Mindari meditation techniques worked. Constructor Z41 was discussing efficient resource allocation methods with Officer Park, who asked intelligent questions about the technical details. "They are actually talking to each other," Moran observed. "When was the last time representatives from these three species had a normal conversation?" "Never," Jiwoo replied. "Their genetic programming usually prevents it. But the human guards are creating a neutral space where none of them feel threatened." The breakthrough came during the evening session. Constructor Z41 presented a detailed analysis of the exotic matter extraction process. His plan was incredibly complex and efficient, but it would take decades to implement. War Speaker Thax countered with a proposal for rapid resource extraction, using Corvin mining fleets, but this approach would be dangerous and wasteful. Prime Thinker Velnara suggested using psychic techniques to locate the richest deposits first, which would be accurate but very slow. Previous negotiations had failed because each group insisted their method was the only correct one. This time, something different happened. Specialist Choi Hana was standing near the architect delegation when she noticed something in Constructor Z41's data. "Excuse me, Constructor, but your efficiency calculations do not account for the time needed to train workers in psychic detection methods." "Psychic detection is not part of architect methodology," Z41 replied. "But Prime Thinker Velnara just said her people could locate the best deposits in days instead of months. Would that not improve your efficiency ratings?" Constructor Z41 paused, his mechanical suit humming as he processed this information. "That would reduce preliminary survey time by 67.3%. War Speaker Thax overheard this conversation. "Corvin fleets could extract material faster if we knew exactly where to dig." Prime Thinker Velnara looked interested. "Psychic scanning works best when there are fewer surface disturbances. Efficient extraction methods would preserve the scanning environment." Intelligence Officer Yoon Do-hyun did not like what he was seeing in the data files. For 3 weeks, he had been analyzing the patterns of security failures across the galaxy. Every time human guards were assigned to protect multi-species meetings, things went well. Every time non-human guards were used, conflicts erupted within hours. The pattern was too perfect, too convenient. Someone was making sure that non-human security forces would fail. Do-hyun sat in his small office aboard the intelligence ship, Sejong, surrounded by screens showing incident reports from dozens of space stations and diplomatic outposts. The same story played out again and again. Draconian guards would suddenly become aggressive during peace talks. Luminary guards would collapse from negative energy overload just as tensions peaked. Synthesizer guards would shut down due to logic errors at the worst possible moments. "Computer, show me the chemical analysis from the Proxima Station incident," he said. The screen displayed a detailed breakdown of atmospheric conditions during a trade negotiation that had gone wrong 2 months earlier. Do-Hyun had requested these tests after noticing that security failures always happened in enclosed spaces with controlled air systems. "Trace amounts of Corvin aggression pheromones detected," the computer reported. "Also present, Mindari anxiety amplifiers, Altarian territorial markers, and 17 other biochemical compounds designed to trigger species-specific stress responses." Do-Hyun leaned back in his chair. Someone had been pumping conflict-inducing chemicals into meeting rooms, but only when non-human guards were present. When human guards were on duty, the air remained clean. His computer chimed with an incoming message from Agent Kang Yoo-jin, who was working undercover at a diplomatic conference on Kepler Station. Her message was coded, but the meaning was clear. She had found something important. Do-Hyun opened a secure communication channel. Yoo-jin's face appeared on his screen, but she looked nervous. "I cannot talk long," she whispered. "I am supposed to be attending a cultural exchange dinner, but I found them, Do-Hyun. The Purist Alliance is real. Tell me everything. They are not just a political movement. They have members from 12 different species, all working together to destabilize the Galactic Council. Their plan is to create so much conflict that the member worlds will give up on peaceful cooperation. Why? They believe the galaxy should be ruled by what they call genetically superior species. Right now, the Council gives equal votes to everyone, from the mighty Draconians to the tiny Kethri. The Purists think that is wrong." Do-Hyun pulled up files on the Purist Alliance. Until now, most intelligence agencies had dismissed them as a small group of extremists who complained about multi-species cooperation, but never did anything about it. "How are they sabotaging the security forces?" "Biochemical weapons," Yoo-jin replied. "They have been studying every species in the Council for decades. They know exactly which chemicals will trigger aggressive responses, fear reactions, or territorial behaviors. They pump these compounds into meeting rooms through the air systems. But why do human guards not get affected?" "That is the scary part, Do-Hyun. They have been studying humans too. They have samples of human blood, human pheromones, human brain scans. They know more about our psychology than we do." The screen flickered as Yoo-jin looked around nervously. "I have to go. But there is something else. The Alliance has been conducting experiments on captured human soldiers. They are trying to find our weaknesses." "What kind of experiments?" "They expose humans to alien pheromones, psychic attacks, genetic triggers, sonic weapons. They want to know what it takes to make humans choose sides in alien conflicts." The communication ended abruptly. Do-Hyun immediately sent an emergency message to Captain Lee Taman at Nexus Station. If the Purist Alliance was targeting human guards, then the current peace negotiations were probably their next target. His computer started receiving automated reports from monitoring stations throughout the sector. Ships were moving toward Nexus Station from multiple directions. Most of them were displaying diplomatic flags, but some were not transmitting identification signals at all. Do-Hyun ran a scan on the unknown ships. The results made his blood run cold. They were carrying specialized atmospheric processors, psychic amplification equipment, and something called a genetic resonance cannon. He had never heard of a genetic resonance cannon before, but the technical specifications were terrifying. The weapon could identify specific DNA patterns and then broadcast frequencies that would trigger violent instincts in target species. It was designed to turn peaceful aliens into mindless berserkers. "Captain Lee," Do-Hyun said into his communicator as he prepared his own ship for immediate departure. "You have a big problem coming your way." Meanwhile, at Nexus Station, Agent Kang Yoo-jin was trying to blend in at the cultural exchange dinner, while gathering more information about the Purist Alliance. She had spent 3 months establishing her cover identity as a human anthropologist studying interspecies relations. The dinner was being held in the station's grand ballroom with representatives from over 30 species sharing food and stories from their home worlds. It should have been a beautiful display of galactic unity. Instead, Eugen could see Purist Alliance agents scattered throughout the room, pretending to be diplomats and journalists. She recognized some of them from intelligence photos. Corvin, war leader Goktor, who believed that only warrior races deserved to rule. Altarian nest mother Krisha, who thought bird-like species were naturally superior to ground-dwelling mammals. Synthesizer Unit Prime 47, which had been programmed to view emotional species as defective machines. But the most dangerous one was sitting at the head table. Mindari Prime Thinker Zelandra looked like any other pale, large-headed psychic, but Eugen knew she was the Alliance's primary strategist. Zelandra had spent her entire career studying how to manipulate different species into fighting each other. "Excuse me, are you the human researcher?" a voice said behind her. Eugen turned to see a small, furry creature that looked like a cross between a cat and a squirrel. It was a Kethri diplomat named Ambassador Squeakly. "Yes, I am studying interspecies cooperation," Eugen replied carefully. "Fascinating. I have heard that humans are immune to most forms of psychological manipulation. Is this true?" Before Eugen could answer, she felt a strange tingling sensation in her mind. Someone was trying to read her thoughts. She looked around and saw Prime Thinker Zelandra staring at her with intense concentration. Eugen had been trained to resist psychic attacks, but this was stronger than anything she had experienced before. Images began flashing through her mind. Her real identity, her mission, her knowledge of the Alliance's plans. "Help," she whispered to Ambassador Squeakly. The little Kethri immediately understood what was happening. "Prime Thinker Zelandra, it is rude to mind-scan someone without permission during a cultural dinner." The psychic attack stopped abruptly. Zelandra looked annoyed, but could not continue her mental invasion without causing a diplomatic incident. "My apologies," Zelandra said coldly. "I was merely curious about human mental structures." "Curiosity can wait until after dessert," Ambassador Squeakly replied firmly. Eugen smiled and thanked the little diplomat, but her mind was racing. If Zelandra had been scanning her thoughts, then the Alliance might already know that their plan had been discovered. Her fears were confirmed when she saw several Alliance agents quietly leaving the ballroom. Within minutes, emergency alarms began sounding throughout Nexus Station. "All diplomatic security teams report to stations immediately," came the announcement over the station's communication system. "Unknown vessels approaching. Threat level, unknown." Eugen abandoned her cover and ran toward the security center. She had to warn the human guards about what was coming. In space around Nexus Station, 12 unmarked ships were taking positions in a perfect attack formation. Each ship carried different types of weapons, all designed to exploit the psychological weaknesses of specific alien species. The lead ship began broadcasting a low-frequency signal that would make Corvin warriors feel challenged and aggressive. Another ship released clouds of chemical compounds that would trigger territorial responses in dozens of different species. A third ship charged up its genetic resonance cannon, preparing to turn the entire diplomatic conference into a battlefield. But there was one thing the Purist Alliance had not counted on. Their years of research into human psychology had revealed that humans could resist most forms of alien manipulation. What they had not realized was that this resistance was not just a defensive ability. When humans saw other species being manipulated and attacked, their instinctive response was not to choose sides or run away. Their instinctive response was to protect everyone, even their enemies. As the Alliance ships opened fire on Nexus Station, every human guard in the facility felt the same emotion: determination to keep everyone safe, regardless of species, politics, or ancient grudges. The real battle was about to begin. The first thing Captain Lee Taman noticed was the screaming. Not the kind of screaming that came from fear or pain, but the wild, mindless howling of creatures that had lost all control of their minds. The genetic resonance weapon had turned the Grand Council chamber into a nightmare. Corvin diplomats were attacking anyone who moved, their warrior instincts amplified beyond all reason. Altarian representatives were flying around the room in panic, their flight responses triggered so strongly that they could not land. The crystalline Helions were resonating at frequencies that shattered every piece of glass in the building. "Status report. Taman shouted into his communicator, but all he heard was static. The Purist Alliance was jamming all communications. Through the chaos, he could see his human guards trying to restore order. Sergeant O'Soman was attempting to calm a group of terrified Kethri who had hidden under an overturned table. Officer Nam Jihoon was trying to keep a berserk draconian from attacking. The Minduri delegation, Specialist Choi Hana, was helping injured Zephyrians who had crashed into the walls. But for every person they helped, 10 more were losing control. The genetic weapons were too strong, and there were too many different species affected at once. This is not working, Taman said to himself. We cannot fight this with force. That was when he remembered something Dr. Kim Ji-woo had told him during the flight to Nexus Station. Human voices were evolutionarily neutral. They did not trigger ancient fears or aggressive responses in alien species because humans had never been part of the galaxy's old conflicts. All human personnel, he announced on the short-range radio that was still working. Stop trying to restrain people. Start talking to them instead. What do you mean, Captain? Came Soman's voice. Just talk. Use calm, normal voices. Do not give orders. Do not try to control them. Just speak to them like they are people having a bad day. It sounded like a ridiculous plan, but they had no other options. One by one, the human guards began speaking softly to the panicking aliens around them. Soman knelt down next to the terrified Kethri. Hey, it is okay, she said gently. I know you are scared. My name is Soman. I am here to keep you safe. The small, furry creatures stopped trembling quite as much. Something about her voice was cutting through the artificial fear that the genetic weapons had implanted in their minds. Officer Park Dong-yun found himself face to face with War Speaker Thax, who was swinging his ceremonial sword at anything that moved. Instead of trying to disarm the massive Corvin, Park simply started talking. War Speaker, you are a respected leader, Park said calmly. Your people look up to you. Do you think they want to see you attacking defenseless diplomats? Thax paused in mid-swing. His eyes were still wild with artificial aggression, but some part of his rational mind was responding to Park's words. The enemies, Thax stammered. What enemies? Park asked. I see Helion Collective members who are just as confused and scared as you are. I see Architect Guild representatives who are trying to help injured people. Where are the enemies, War Speaker? Slowly, Thax lowered his sword. The genetic weapon was still affecting him, but Park's neutral voice was giving him an anchor to reality. All around the chamber, similar scenes were playing out. Human guards were talking to panicked aliens in calm, steady voices that somehow cut through the artificial chaos. They were not trying to take control or pick sides. They were simply being human. Dr. Kim Ji-woo watched from the observation deck as her theory proved itself in the most dramatic way possible. It is working, she whispered to Ambassador Park Moran. Human voices really are acting as a stabilizing influence, but why? Moran asked. Because we sound like outsiders, Ji-woo explained. When a Corvin hears another Corvin voice during combat, it triggers either ally or enemy responses. When a Helion hears crystalline harmonics, it activates their resonance reflexes. But when any alien hears a human voice, it just sounds like background noise, neutral data. It does not trigger their programmed responses. On the main floor, the situation was slowly improving. More and more aliens were regaining control of themselves as the human guards continued speaking to them in calm, reassuring tones. But the battle was far from over. Agent Kang Yujin burst into the chamber with urgent news from Intelligence Officer Hyun Do-hyun. Captain, she shouted. The Purist Alliance ships are preparing for a direct assault. They have boarding pods loaded with Alliance soldiers who are immune to their own genetic weapons. Taman looked around at the chamber full of recovering diplomats. Most of them were still disoriented from the psychic attack. They would not be able to defend themselves if Alliance soldiers stormed the station. How many Alliance troops? He asked. Maybe 200, from 12 different species. All of them are fanatics who believe in genetic supremacy. Taman counted his available forces. 24 human guards, most of them already exhausted from calming down panicked aliens. Against 200 heavily armed supremacists, They had no chance in a direct fight. "We need a different strategy," he said. That was when Prime Thinker, Velnara of the Mindari, approached him. The psychic's large black eyes were clearer now, no longer clouded by artificial emotions. "Captain Lee," she said formally, "I must apologize for the behavior of my species during this crisis. We were not ourselves." "No apology needed," Taman replied. "You were under attack." "Yes, but you and your guards protected us anyway. Even when we were acting like enemies, you treated us like people who needed help." She paused. "This is not something my people would have done. We would have abandoned any species that turned hostile toward us." War Speaker Thax had been listening to this conversation. The massive Corvin stepped forward, his sword now properly sheathed. "The human speaks truth," he declared. "In Corvin culture, we protect only our allies, but these humans protected everyone equally, even those who threatened them. This is unusual." Constructor Z41 floated over in his mechanical suit. "Statistical analysis confirms. Human guards showed no preference based on species compatibility, cultural similarity, or strategic value. Protection services were distributed with perfect equality. Other aliens were gathering around, all of them looking at the human guards with something like wonder. Representatives from dozens of species who had been enemies just minutes before were now standing together, united by their shared experience of being protected by people who owed them nothing. "The Alliance ships are beginning their assault," Eugen reported. "Boarding pods launching in 30 seconds. Taman was about to give orders for a desperate defense when something unexpected happened. War Speaker Thax drew his sword again, but this time he pointed it toward the ceiling. "Corvin warriors," he bellowed. "These humans have shown us what true honor looks like. They protected the weak without asking for reward. They defended their enemies without hesitation. Today we fight beside them." Prime Thinker Velnara raised her hands and psychic energy began swirling around her. "Mindari Collective. These humans have proven that strength comes not from superiority, but from service. Today we lend them our minds." Constructor Z41's mechanical suit hummed with power. "Architect Guild. These humans have demonstrated perfect efficiency in protection protocols. Today, we provide them with our technology." All around the chamber, representatives from 50 different species were pledging their support to the human guards. The very aliens who had been fighting each other hours earlier were now volunteering to fight together in defense of the people who had protected them. Taman felt overwhelmed. "You do not owe us anything," he said. "This is our job." "No," replied Ambassador Squeakly, the small Kethri diplomat. "This is everyone's job now. You have shown us that protection is not about species or politics or ancient grudges. It is about recognizing that every life has value." The Alliance boarding pods crashed through the station's hull just as the most diverse army in galactic history was forming up for battle. Corvin warriors stood shoulder to shoulder with Mindari psychics. Altarian flyers coordinated with Depth Singer aquatic specialists. Synthesizer logic units worked alongside Zephyrian emotional empaths, and at the center of it all, human guards directed the defense with calm, steady voices that every species could understand and trust. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Purist Alliance was finished as a political force. Their ships were captured, their plans exposed, their ideology discredited by the sight of dozens of species working together in perfect harmony. 3 months later, the Galactic Council held a special session to establish the Human Guard Corps. General Song Kubum, the first human to hold such a high position in galactic security, read the oath that would define the new organization. "We swear to stand guard over all sentient life, regardless of species, culture, or history. We will protect the weak from the strong, the few from the many, and all beings from those who would harm them. We will show no favoritism based on alliance or enmity, friendship or conflict. In the eyes of the Human Guard Corps, every life is equally precious, every being equally deserving of protection." Lieutenant Han Arium stood in the training facility on Earth, watching as new recruits from dozens of species practiced the human approach to security. They were learning to put away their ancestral fears and genetic prejudices.